welcome to The Nation This Week. You're joining me, Elaine Abdullah, live from the Wisma Bernama in the capital city of Kuala Lumpur. Today we discuss The Nation This Week. And in this week's panel, I have three very special guests. Dr. A.T. KUMARARAJAH, NCCIM, Geostrategist, political analyst AZMI HASSAN joins me as well, and intellectual property expert GEETHA KANDIAH joins our panel this week. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the panel this week as we discuss topics that are trending as well as making headlines. First, let's recap some of the biggest stories this week, shall we? Now, Hishamuddin has weighed in as unforgivable to fake COVID-19 vaccine certs, and he says the authorities should take uncompromising action against those found falsifying COVID-19 vaccination records and test results. Then, of course, there's Shebi's untimely passing. We're talking about Sarwjit Singh, and his son thanks Malaysians for words of appreciation after his father's death. Also, guys, do you think this was sort of a watershed moment for us? Undi 18 implementation. Malaysia is going to have roughly an additional 1.2 million voters aged between 18 to 21 following the full implementation of the automatic voters registration system soon. Now, let's break the ice with this. AZMI, let's hear from you, and others, please jump in. Don't wait for me to prompt. If you have anything to, initiate, please go ahead. AZMI, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Elaine. I thought it was GEETHA first, ladies first, I guess.
Ladies first.
As you mentioned, it's okay. When you mentioned Datuk Hishamuddin said no mercy should be given to the COVID-19, I would say the false certificate, false vaccination. Let's talk about Djokovic. He's trying to go around. He's not lying, but he's trying to go around saying that he has been vaccinated, not vaccinated, but he has been infected by this COVID-19. So he should be exempted. But again, I think rule is rule, whether he's number one or number two in tennis, but rule must be implemented. No exception in this case. But in case in Malaysia, Elaine and also Dato' AT and so GEETHA, we see that some are going to ban, trying to get a false COVID-19 certificate. That's very, very disturbing, and I'm very frustrated. We still have that kind of thinking. I think Djokovic example, I think is a good one. I think Dato' AT want to say something about it. Dato'.
But actually, I think in this case, Malaysia has done better, and YB Hishamuddin has actually said the right thing in that, those who have flouted the rules and given this false vaccination, doesn't matter whether you procured it or you gave it, I think you should be punished, and the full breadth of the law should actually be descended upon them. Because if you look at this Djokovic story, actually, as you read it now, I was just checking just before we went live, until 6 p.m. today, the immigration minister has yet to exercise his rights and saying, look, you should be denied. So I actually cannot blame Djokovic, because he's just saying, look, an Australian guys gave me authorization and they said, let me in, so I came in. But actually, the immigration minister is neither making the call. A lot of them is pressuring him. So, in many ways, I think Malaysia, we have our shortcomings, and we also know that some of our citizens get that kind of privilege. Now, the same thing won't apply if I and you ended up in Melbourne and we were not vaccinated. Nobody will bother. We will probably be on the flight out next hour. Yes. These guys have really a caught battle. There are people protesting on the streets. I mean, who will protest for me and you? Our family itself would have said, how stupid can you guys?
It's a difference of being a top seat player, I guess, Dato'. Different privileges come with that. So I think what is wrong is I think you're right. I mean, spot on. Like, why is it taking so long? It's been 5 days. This came up on Monday. The appeal, they reinstated it, and then now it's gone back to reconsideration. So I'm not sure. To a large extent, being the lawyer, it's very much paperwork. Has he submitted the paperwork? Has he cleared the paperwork? Is he flouting any laws? So why is the decision still up in the air? Well, definitely, I think because of the commercial reasons behind it. He is not you and me. He's not a lay person. There's endorsement deals in question.
Other 100. There's like 128 as I read. So 128 other tennis players are there, fully vaccinated. So I think he should just do the right thing. Right? I don't understand why the court must tell him. Why can't
No, I
people
mean,
just
if
do the
you,
right thing?
it's interesting when you read the news on it. He did do the right thing. He actually had a clearance, and then he took the flight.
Mm.
So that's the confusing part here.
But now
He
the
had
right situation now.
clearance, landed there,
All right.
and then had all these problems.
So is this
Okay, but-
indecisions of sort of flip-flopping in terms of whether you can come in and you can come out? That's the one that's creating the problem. It's not about whether. Sorry.
True. But then if you again read I suppose you read the fine print, it says like now if I'm given a visa to go to a particular country, while I end up in the immigration has got a set of precedents to say, look, should this be verified, whatever you provided us, if there's new information which is made available to them in the interim period, so they can still exercise that. So in this case, they are exercising it and said, look, yes, you had your COVID positive, but now you're not fully vaccinated. You're not exempted from a rule. So pack your bags. Actually,
so essentially, it's a celebrity star power waiver that's happening at this point of time. But let's now move quickly on to another story, because we have quite a few things we would like to cover. Asmi, you also brought up the issue of Boris Johnson. We're still talking about COVID-19 and Boris Johnson's party story. How can we tie it back to what's happening here?
Yeah, it's about Elaine, about trust, I guess. You are the Prime Minister. There's no double standard rule here. When you made a mistake, you should own it and you have to face the consequences. Same as Matt Hancock a few months ago, the Minister for Health. He broke the SOP, he resigned. He knew that he had to resign. But Boris Johnson, when you mentioned Elaine Boris Johnson, I like to mention about, there's a VT about it, but Prince Andrew, for example, because GEETHA said, well, she's a lawyer. I think talking about Prince Andrew, he hasn't gone to the court yet, but the monarchy make a decision that to pull out all his title, his Royal Highness title, and also his military title. It's
He's
all
gone to,
about, I think, responsibility in this case. Yeah.
He's gone to court. Because the action is in court, so he has appointed an American lawyer.
Yeah, but,
So
the trial haven't started yet. But I think it's such a damage control, I guess. The palace said, you better deal it individually. I think that's the way to preserve the integrity in this case. Yeah, Dato'.
True, Prof. That's the thing, right? So again, I mean, as much as we're not really sure that allegations are true or not and all that, I mean, that's beside the point. But at least whether the palace made the call or Prince Andrew himself made that call, but it was the right call. But we don't see that happening here, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to, I'm not sure whether I'm not going to allowed to speak about it, but then here we pass the buck to the palace and says, unless the palace says I'm not doing anything.
Okay, I'm not going into it. Right? Okay.
So those are some lessons that we can learn from the Queen herself, because I think it's upholding a certain standard in terms of what the royal institution represents and how people will look up to them as role models in terms of how to function and how to behave in society as a representative of the way forward. As how you mentioned, leaders should be taking that step as opposed to be waiting for someone else in terms of the authorities to tell them what they should and shouldn't do, or be penalized before they take the supposedly right action. So those are just a few things that we were talking about earlier, but let's go to some of the topics that you brought up, Dr. Eti. The e-commerce, of course, let's talk about e-commerce and food delivery and service gross merchandise value expanded by 30 billion in 2021. This is according to Tok Pa, who is, of course, Datuk Sri Mustafa Mohamad in the Prime Minister's Department of Economy. Let's talk about the food delivery services having grown by in excess of $7 billion in gross merchandise value. But you had a question with regards to this, Dr. Eti. Perhaps you can elaborate.
That's the thing, right? So, I mean, I read that article by Tok Pa and I realized, okay, fine. So we have got this so-called 30 billion ringgit market movement that happened last year. But this 30 billion ringgit market movement is zero-sum game, because these are the 30 billion ringgit. The market, naturally, the empirical growth would have been, say, 7 to 10%. This $30 billion is primarily taken away from those mom and pop shops. So the guys would have probably directly gone and bought groceries or food or whatever else that they probably do over this e-hailing or ride-hailing. So this has basically still moved the market. But none of this, and it seems to be positive news, but if you really go back and see any of these companies, and I actually I think we did speak about Grab right? So Grab has really got grabbed the wrong headlines in the last month. From the time they went IPO to now, 5 weeks or 6 weeks into IPO, they are down 50%. They're down 50% of market capitalization. They're down from about $40 billion to about $20 billion US dollars, and they're nowhere near recovery. So if you look at these business models, as much as they've been hailed as the new frontier, the gig economy, and things like that, how sustainable there are. You take Grab, for example, right? So they are a missed opportunity as far as Malaysia is concerned, but they are a company that has burned nearly 13 billion US dollars over the last 10 years and still not made money. And they don't have a road to profitability. You cannot compare them to, say, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, because those days, those companies, they bled a couple of years, but they made money. They eventually found a feasible business model from which they could make money. None of this. I don't know how many people even remember there was a company called Uber. Uber so now those guys don't even exist here, right? So Uber now has gone, if you read what happened to Uber 2.5 years down the line, they are still trading below their IPO price. So to me, that kind of news, while it's positive, but we must take it with a pinch of salt. Really, nobody has found, world over, to be fair to Grab, nobody has really found a business model that's feasible as far as this online delivery, e-hailing. None of it has actually made money. So I suppose you must take this digitalization story with a pinch of salt. I mean, that's
Geetha and Azmi.
Yeah. No, I agree with Dato' when he said there's no proven business model for this digital company. But again, when you mention Grab, I think we felt quite frustrated. Grab was developed in Malaysia, but they moved to Singapore because of the better offering or better ecosystem. Correct. Talking about these digital companies, I remember the Minister for Mosti, Adam Babar, said at least he want to create within 5 years 2 unicorn companies in Malaysia. Singapore has 7 already. Singapore has 5. Vietnam has 2. Philippines has 3 or 4. Malaysia has none as yet. And I think
India has 42.
Sorry?
India has 42.
Yeah, India is too far away. It's okay, too far away. I'm talking about our neighbors. When you say because we have to use our neighbors to instill some competition to our citizens here. That's why I use Singapore, Indonesia, and Vietnam and Philippines. But again, we need a better ecosystem. I agree that I think we learned from our Grab experience that we need a better ecosystem offering in terms of venture capitalists or something like that. Yeah, Geetha, go ahead, Geetha.
So it's interesting. Uber has shares in Grab, and that's how Uber left Malaysia. Yeah, so they kind of eliminated competition by investing into Grab. I think it's all a data game. Yes, we might not see the value now, but it's about acquiring data in ASEAN. They're big in Myanmar. They're big in other countries in Indonesia. So it seemed like WhatsApp a very long time ago. What were they doing? Delivering all these free services. It's all the free technology companies. Eventually, with all the data, the amount of data they have, because they're not just an e-hailing app, they are a super app, which means they have transport, they have food deliveries, they have dispatch. So the data
They
they're
have
collecting.
a bank also.
GrabPay, yes. So it's all about the data they're collecting, and at that stage they can develop more products, and that those products might be more profitable. So I do see there is value, and we're not seeing it now. And it's the same thing that Facebook had for a very long time. Facebook was bleeding, and then again, what were they doing with data? Of course, Facebook has its own share of dilemma with data privacy, but there are monetization capabilities moving forward. So I totally see the value in the tech game. It's all about collecting data, and they know us better than we know ourselves sometimes.
Yeah. Dato', you also mentioned the TAIPUSM 2022. Of course, KKM leads a tabletop exercise with scenario planning for the TAIPUSM 2022 with agencies involved in medical and emergency services. You have some comments on that as well?
Oh, no, I mean, actually, I wanted to speak about the TAIPUSM 2022 in the very different context, because if you look at the current government speaks about Keluarga Malaysia and topics like that. And then they keep saying, Keluarga, any of the celebration will actually bring about better racial harmony, better integration between the communities and all that. And I think Thaipusam is one of those national events, despite the COVID restrictions and the SOPs and whatever else. Two things has really happened this year. One, MKN Putrajaya, to speak about, has really gone very granular, visited temples, made engagements with the priest, made engagements with the temple management, and something which is very unique because you probably wouldn't have seen this in the pre-COVID days. So in post-COVID, I think this is one good thing. A lot of engagement, a lot of understanding happens. And obviously the SOPs are more granular in that way. But the other thing that really happens in all Thaipusams, because I've always been involved in the medical and emergency services, one thing that is realized, national integration, you don't have to go very, very far because we bring traffic, or Thaipusam brings traffic to a near standstill in middle of KL, in that 14-kilometer journey, which takes about 18 hours. And despite the devotees being Indians or Hindus, to be specific, a lot of the armed, uniformed bodies and the people that guard and provide the security and safety and the medical help and everything else is actually the non-Indians. In many ways, I think if you really want to see national unity at work, you probably see it in Thaipusam. And that's something which is amazing. It's not really spoken about, but I can tell you that's really very, very amazing because nobody questions in a Hindu temple the presence of non-Hindus and the way they interact. It's just an amazing thing, and I just wanted to speak about that for a while.
Well, Dato', if Malaysian have 9, I think out of 10 thinking like you, Dato', I think it'll be okay.
I think okay, Prof. You're right. So you're very right, Prof. 9 out of 10 Malaysians like us think like that. The problem is the 9 out of 10 politicians don't think like that.
Yeah, I think our Minister of National Unity, Dato' Halimah Sadiq, I think should take cue of this. I think it's very implicit regarding the different, not only Thaipusam, but different celebration. It's part of integration. I like to use Singapore, for example. For Thaipusam this year, there'll be no procession allowed. And if you want to go to temple, you have to do pre-admission or pre-registration. I think we don't have it down here in Malaysia, so I think we are very flexible to it. We understand. And when you say the MKN do some soul searching at a various part of temple, I think is a good way. Should not stop now, but should be expand after the post-pandemic, I guess.
Why behind us? Sure, Elaine.
Yeah, I just want to jump in because I want to go on to the next topic before I actually talk about Undi 18 because I like to touch on Undi 18 as well. But you did bring up about the Penang Hindu Association PHA calling on authorities to ban the sale of t-shirts and prayer items bearing the images. Perhaps you want to touch on that a little bit?
See, again, right? So you will never find a perfect formula. There's always somebody trying to, somebody trying to break on the scene, somebody on the fringes making all these ultra actions. And I think those must be dealt with in specific manners, and that cannot be extrapolated and says they represent the large majority of us. The large majority of us are Malaysians first. So regardless of what, if we actually espouse this Malaysian identity, it's just that there's a bunch of everywhere. You don't have to go very far. Developed nations, right? So they put Obama after 200 years, but there you still have the George Floyd issue. So it happens, right? So just deal with it with the laws that exist.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, we want to be able to, bring up that spirit of Malaysia. Now, we talk about Undi 18 implementation. Malaysia is going to have, of course, I mentioned earlier, roughly an additional 1.2 million voters aged between 18 to 21. And the Commission has finally completed the system to enable those 18 and above to vote, which will see an additional 5.8 million voters at any election called after January 16. Let's start with your thoughts, Azmi.
1.2 million 18 to 21 is a huge number. SPR said that within each parliament constituency, there will be additional 10,000 to 20,000 new voters. That 1821, not the other who haven't registered. But the problem is, Elaine and also Dato', also GEETHA, if you look at Melaka, the 35% that who did not go to vote is under 45. So yes, they are very noisy in media social talking about politics, this younger generation. But when come polling day, whether they will go to the poll day is something else. So I think they have to make use the power that they have now to go to the polls. If you look at Singapore last year, Elaine, why the opposition won 10 seats is because the under 30 voters, they dare to make a decision, a very extreme decision. So I think it will be a game changer when GE15 comes. But I still have a doubt that the 18 to 21 years old will go out to the polls.
They can mobilize themselves if they want to. Geetha, your thoughts on this?
I think it's a great move for them to allow the young voters, but it's also very scary. So they need to totally win the hearts of these voters. What move is great is that they made it automatic. So they made it automatic.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think she's feeling choppy on the other side. I think.
Yeah,
think
we
my
can hear you
internet-
completely well. So you can go ahead. It's coming through clearly.
I'm saying it's great that it's automatic, that they don't have to take the additional effort, as we know that age group is also very, very quick and very fast. If anything slows them down, like a very beautiful process of getting registered, that will slow down. That's, I think, Prof, is why a lot of people don't vote. The whole pain of getting registered. So one thing's eliminated. There must be incentives. There must be incentives to get them to go. A lot of the young ones, if they feel disheartened, that's going to be, I rather not make a decision. I rather not take any action. So there must be very well thought incentives by the government to get them up and active, making a decision.
Datuk, your thoughts on this?
No, it's a watershed decision, right? So regardless of who fought for it and how they made it happen and the gazettement and all that, while it takes time, I think it's a watershed decision to get this automatic registration one and then to get 18 one. So there's two things that has happened simultaneously. So this automatic registration applies across the board, and then 18 becomes the new age for which you can start voting. I just hope that eventually this will be more, distributed voting. Plus, actually, G15 will erase everything that we know as far as voting and what patterns and how which party is to win or not, because simply all this old data goes to nowhere. As it is, we have a heterogeneous group of political parties. We don't even sure who belongs to where now, because they have jumped so many times and they had so many changes of government. But again, these new voters will completely change the denominator demographics. So G15, like Geetha mentioned just now, will give us a complete new set of data sets from which we can move forward and say, in G16, this will be the voting pattern, because you really cannot predict. Prof mentioned just now, right? So the guys who don't go out, you probably automatically registered. But then for you to get out and go to the polling station now, that's another thing. And I suppose in G15, we'll see more TikTok than WhatsApp.
I think the concern is fake.
I've already registered TikTok. Have you?
No, I think we all should be registering TikTok. I think I just wanted to bring up that I think a lot of people had concerns about being so young in terms of being the 18 to 21 group. Would they know how to be able to discern what would be the right path, who would be the right representative to call the shots? But I think once you give the power to those in those age groups, then they must make those decisions. They must be educated. They must have those thoughts. And I'm just hoping that there will be those kind of movements to be able to shed light on because I think we always talk about I think the young don't want the same old narratives that have been sold all these years. We want the better narratives where we're talking about cohesion, we're talking about unity, we're talking about moving forward, as opposed to race-based politics that have been dominating for the last 60 years. So your thoughts on this quickly before we sort of end in the next 1 to 2 minutes. Let's
very
start with
quickly. I was going to give my 2 cents. Was exactly what I was worried about in terms of, I say that it's great, but it's scary. This whole fake news and that age group are very much tied down with TikTok and social media. But what is right and wrong there? So Facebook has been brought to light about how influential they have been in the American politics with the information that they put out. So for us, I think it's going to be 2 things. It's going to be the multimedia, CMC, taking more action on fake news online, especially gearing up towards election.
Datuk.
I again things, right? So I suppose we have to do different things and we have to do things differently. We will do that differently in G15 with this only 18 and everything else that comes with it. I just hope the elections will be called very sooner than later.
Azmi, your last thoughts before we close?
Yeah, Elaine, when you said you're worried about the young voters, I'm not worried about the young voters. I'm worried about the younger candidates. Look at Blacker, 21 years old. It's going to be very, very difficult if the younger candidates, 21 years old, going to fish some vote. Going to be very difficult. You need to be an experienced candidate, not only fresh faces, but experienced candidates. Elaine.
Yeah, we are hoping that we will have mentors who take on that mantle to be able to groom the younger candidates to know how to face it. I mean, as the younger you start, the better it is for us to be able to build. We always talk about not having the barisan pelapis, we don't know who's next. But this is actually the sort of like stepping stone, the platform for us to be able to build that kind of worth for our younger generation to have leadership qualities that we all can stand behind as citizens of Malaysia. Thank you so much, our panel for this week, GEETHA KANDIAH, as well as AZMI HASSAN, as well as Dr. A.T. KUMARARAJAH. We were speaking about all the topics that were making headlines this week. This was, of course, The Nation This Week. You were joining me, Elaine Abdullah, and thanks for staying with us till the end of the session. Bye for now.